Okay, well, welcome back, Hidden Acres Outdoors. This is day 3 of our farm pond project, and this basically is a recap of what happened yesterday. They basically got all the trees cleared out from what we were where the dam's going to go, and removed some of the topsoil just to see what we're dealing with. And this morning, what they're doing here is they're starting on a core trench and moving some more of the topsoil. So basically, you have to have a core trench in your dam, in my opinion. There's tens of thousands of gallons of water that is pushing against that dam, even if it's just static pressure. And if you don't want to spring a leak, I mean, if you grew up building dams and creeks like we did as kids, it doesn't take any time for, you spring a leak in that thing, and before long you've got a mess. And then you've got, we used to have emergency supplies of clay and everything else to try and plug the holes, but it never worked. And that's why a lot of people these days, when you hire somebody with a mini excavator and a skid steer to try and build you a lake, you're throwing good money into a hole that you're going to have to pour a whole lot of money into later, in my opinion, because you're going to end up with leakage and dam failures, is the worst case scenario, and just all kinds of trouble. So have them make sure, whoever you hire to do this, they go in and dig out a core trench. And what this core trench does is it anchors the dam into some more solid foundation. And you got to dig down into the clay, because clay is a lot less porous than all the other topsoil and other type dirt that you might have on your property. uh, this shot gives you a little more perspective on where this pond's going to go in relation to the property. There's a shot in here in a minute that shows you about the extent of what the dam's going to look like. And this is just more footage of a big track hoe moving big rocks, and the bulldozers and John Deere 8850 tractors with 12 foot wide pan scoops. And, basically, when you dig a big hole in the ground, the dirt's got to go somewhere. So they're taking all the dirt, and some of it he's moving behind where the core trench was to, help build the dam up. And then a lot of it he's pulling up to the left side of this picture and dumping it in some low spots that we had in the field and filling that in. So there's the extent of what the dam should look like, roughly, when it gets done. That's some of the big rocks they're digging out. And I'm giving you a little foreshadow warning here. The rocks are an issue. It does affect what you wind up with as far as depth of the pond in some areas. But we'll leave that for one of the later videos, so stay tuned for that. At any rate, we're excited by this. We've been planning on doing this since we picked out the house plans and, decided how we wanted to lay everything out. If you'll notice, there's no landscaping around the house yet, and the yard is not much more than just native grasses and stuff. There's a reason for that. You saw those big rocks. We have a 640-foot deep well, and if you guys got any experience with deep wells, they cost a ton of money to build. For example, my neighbor, I can throw a rock and hit his house almost. He's about 400 yards up. I think he told me his pond was about his well was about 160 feet deep. Ours is 640 feet, and they hung the well pump at 300 feet. And I really didn't want to spend a whole lot of money to try and, have that drilled deeper in case it runs dry. I certainly hope it doesn't, but I wasn't willing to risk the gamble of, irrigating a yard and a garden and landscaping and everything else. So that's one of the reasons we're digging this farm pond. Number one, so we can irrigate and actually get some grass and landscape going and it doesn't die. Number two, it would relieve a lot of the pressure off of the well. You know, another reason is obviously because I like to fish, and we've got a bunch of grandkids that like to fish, and just the aesthetic value added to the property will pay dividends, well above what this thing is costing us to build. If you've got any questions on how we're going about this process or how we wound up with the contractor that we wound up with, I would just say find you a guy that's built several of these. They should be more than willing to take you out and give you a tour of some of the work that they've done. And if they're not willing to do that, then you need to keep looking for a different pond contractor. Any questions you have, they can answer. I don't know if most of the guys get into how you stock the pond and what ratios and how you maintain it. I think these guys mainly, unless you're just paying an exorbitant amount of money for consulting work on this, at the same time you're paying for construction work, most of them just come out and dig you a big hole in the ground, and if they do it right, it won't leak and your dam won't fail. But beyond that, there's a lot of research you need to do, and the place to start, I would say, would be with your local wildlife biologist or farm ag type person, and they will come out and survey your property, tell you where you ought to put it, tell you how big they think it can be, whether you've got springs feeding it or it's just going to be runoff or you've got a creek feeding it. And if you get into the creeks and you've got downstream rivers, and you get into a whole lot of environmental concern stuff. But out here where I'm at, we're just digging a big hole in the ground and letting the rainwater come into it, and so that limits you on the size that you're going to be able to have for your pond. But I'm about tired of talking. Y'all probably about tired of listening if you hadn't left already. So let's just watch them remove a little more of this topsoil, because as I told you earlier, these big machines just fascinate me. There's not a man out there alive that hadn't played in a sandbox with a bulldozer and a tractor and moved sand around. If you had that opportunity to grow up, then this is what you were pretending to be doing, and it's just a whole heck of a lot of fun to sit out on the porch in a rocking chair and watch these guys do this stuff for real. And as a matter of fact, if my wife weren't so shy, she'd be out there doing that, because it's killing her that she can't get out there and drive that big equipment and move some dirt. But she's going to have to ask them herself, otherwise it's not going to happen. We'll see you next time, Hidden Acres Outdoors. Bye.